Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez takes place this weekend in the main event of UFC 290, Volkanovski versus Rodriguez. And I am worried for my prediction of Alexander Volkanovski to win this fight via 4th round TKO, because I understand that Yair Rodriguez is an extremely dangerous matchup for Alexander Volkanovski. If there is going to be a featherweight in that division that has a chance of beating Alex, it's Yair Rodriguez. Everyone knows that. Yair Rodriguez has a style that is good at knocking down short opponents, it seems. With his head kicks, they're going to be a lot easier to land on short opponents, and we saw him land a few of them on Max Holloway, but of course Max Holloway's chin is absolutely ridiculous. Of course, Yair Rodriguez showed in his Josh Emmett fight that he has a great ability for flying knees. Those are going to be good against short opponents as well. Alexander Volkanovski does sometimes lead with his head, and we saw in the Islam Makhachev fight that there is a chance to maybe land a knee on Alexander Volkanovski as he comes in for those exchanges. But I think he's going to be aware of that when it comes to fighting Yair Rodriguez, as opposed to when he was fighting Makhachev and maybe not expecting knees up the middle. But Yair Rodriguez is extremely dangerous to Volk. In fact, I was kind of like not sure who to pick in this fight. I have my reasons for why I'm picking Volkanovski, but I feel like in my full card prediction video, I didn't give the reasons for why Yair Rodriguez is so dangerous enough credit, because it really is a dangerous fight for Volkanovski. I want to speak about the fact that when fighters go back down to a division that they haven't been to in a while, or just when they go down in a division in general, there seems to be like a shock to their system in terms of the speed. Now, this is a bit better for when fighters have already been in a lower weight class, so at least they know what they're in for. But when fighters come down like to a new division that they haven't really been in before, we see examples of this, like with TJ Dillashaw versus, Henry Cejudo in the flyweight division. There just seemed to be a bit of a speed difference, and he was shocked by it. We saw it with Cody Garbrandt moving down against Kai Kara France. Cody Garbrandt went 5 rounds with Rob Font. He went down against Kai Kara France, and it was just like Kara France was a little bit too quick for him. So I am worried that maybe Volk is going to have a bit of a dangerous moment in round 1. And that is what my prediction is going to be. Even if I don't think Yair Rodriguez is going to win, I'm going to make the prediction that Yair Rodriguez is going to drop Alexander Volkanovski in the first round. I truly believe that's going to happen. And I think it's going to happen with a head kick, maybe a knee to the face, but I don't see him finishing Alexander Volkanovski. But I have to be aware of how dangerous that is, because Volk has just been at lightweight. He was used to things a little bit slower. Of course, he hasn't been at featherweight in quite some time as well. I know Volkanovski's been very active, but he fought Max Holloway at featherweight, of course. But then he made weight on short notice at lightweight, and then he fought at lightweight, and now he's coming back down to featherweight. So it's not like he just moved up to lightweight and now he's coming back down. He was at lightweight for basically 2 fights worth of training camps, because he made weight as a backup for Makhachev versus Oliveira. So there is a chance that he's going to have a little bit of a moment in that first round where he's going to have to get used to the speed difference, and going to have to get used to the speed that Yair Rodriguez is throwing kicks with. He's also short, so Yair Rodriguez's kicks are going to be very effective, but I think Volkanovski's just too defensively aware. Whenever you see Volkanovski caught by something, he always acknowledges it like he saw it coming. When Mendes dropped him, I ran out of breath there. When Mendes dropped him in their fight, he got back up, put his guard up, and nodded at Mendes and went, "Yeah, cool, you got me." When Makhachev caught him as well, he popped right back up, started throwing back, and then backed up and got his guard up and said, "Yeah, good one, you got me," and acknowledges it. Same thing against Max Holloway as well. I feel like he's not one of these fighters that's not going to see a shot coming. And if he's knowing to prepare for a Yair Rodriguez, where there is going to be head kicks and front kicks and knees, I think he's going to be aware of that shot coming when it does land, and maybe even get like one arm up or one hand up to block for a head kick like he did against Makhachev. Remember, he blocked that head kick from Makhachev with one arm that sort of took a bit of a sting off of it, because that could have been a KO blow from Makhachev. That was after he got dropped by Makhachev, like behind the head with a forearm as he was inside against Islam Makhachev. He got caught with a head kick as he got back up and still got a hand up for it. So I think he's a much better fighter than the one that fought Max Holloway in the rematch. A much better fighter. I mean, the performances that he's had since then are night and day. He's on a different level right now. So I don't think you can say, oh, well, Holloway caught him with a head kick once in one fight of his entire career. I know he got KO'd with a head kick at welterweight or middleweight as well a long time ago. But, in his career where he's been the real Volkanovski that we all know. He's only been dropped by one shot from Holloway to the head, and I know he ain't expecting head kicks from Max Holloway. No one expects a head kick from Max Holloway. So when he knows it's coming and he knows what to watch out for, I think he's going to be a little bit better at surviving it, but I do think it's going to land and take him off balance. I think there's going to be a head kick that partially lands from Yair Rodriguez. Volkanovski maybe goes down to one knee, gets back up, Yair does a jump knee that barely misses, and Volkanovski's on the back foot, keeping his guard up tight, staying against the cage, moving around, getting the clinch, going for a takedown, and Yair gets back up, and there's just going to be a moment where Yair goes for a finish in the first round, and I do think he's going to score that knockdown. But again, something that I mentioned in my full card prediction video, Yair Rodriguez's ground and pound is extremely pathetic. Okay, extremely pathetic. He has really a high lack of power after dropping an opponent. We saw that against Jeremy Stephens, who he had really badly hurt to the body, by the way, where his liver completely shut down. And Stephens is hunched over on the ground, finished. And somehow Yair Rodriguez is putting on the most pathetic ground and pound with hammer fists, and he fails to get the finish. Even the finish against BJ Penn was a little bit lackluster. It wasn't like a shot that drops him in and a follow-up shot or two and the fight's over. He was like swinging on BJ Penn for a very long time after that knockdown happened. I think there's too much opportunity there for a guy like Volkanovski to switch on his recovery that he has, that he showed against Holloway in their second fight, that he showed against Chad Mendes, that he showed against Islam Makhachev, to switch on that recovery that he has and get himself back into that fight. And I think if Yair Rodriguez has that moment in his big fight for the title where he almost finishes Alexander Volkanovski and he goes for the finish, I think we're going to see him really start to gas out, and we might see a similar Yair Rodriguez that showed up against Jeremy Stephens, where he got pretty much dominated in the third round by Jeremy Stephens because he completely gassed out going for a finish. We didn't see much in that Josh Emmett fight. I know he won, but after he hurt Josh Emmett, he finished him by submission. I don't see him catching a submission on Alexander Volkanovski, so I feel a bit safe there because Ortega couldn't do it, and Ortega had a really good shot and even knocked Volkanovski off balance for a second, so the submission being in was a surprise. When I watched back Josh Emmett versus Yair Rodriguez, anyone can go back and watch this fight, I called it as it was happening. Emmett is leaving himself open to be submitted here. There was a long period of time where Josh Emmett was laying on top of Yair Rodriguez with one arm in and one arm out of the guard of Yair Rodriguez. You know you don't do that if you don't want to get armbarred or triangled. It's both arms in or both arms out. That's the typical rule on how to deal with a guy who's nice and offensive off of his back. Josh Emmett left that arm in for so long, and he was so non-urgent in that position. I don't see Volkanovski doing that when he's being trained by a guy in Craig Jones. And we've seen him in that guillotine attempt by Ortega go to the next thing to try and make it work. Moving on the hips, pulling at the arm of Brian Ortega, trying to break the grip of Brian Ortega, wiggling, trying to get a better angle for his neck where he's not so hunched over in that position. He went step by step to escape those positions. So I don't see Yair finishing him by submission. I don't see him finishing him by TKO. But I will admit, there will be a moment where he knocks down Volkanovski. I can see it. Volkanovski trying to load in and come in and step through, front kick to the face maybe. Maybe a head kick as he's pulling out of an exchange and Yair just throws a head kick at the end of an exchange that they have. Maybe it's a flying knee that lands partially and Volk sits down for a minute and then jumps back up on a takedown and gets back to his feet. Yair Rodriguez is extremely dangerous for Volkanovski, but I'm going to mention some more about this matchup as well. The boxing of Yair is good, but a guy like Volkanovski, I can already see the game plan that he's going to employ against Yair Rodriguez. We see Yair, when he's not offensive with his striking, which I don't think he's going to be able to be here, I think he's going to be swinging a lot of counter hooks. His chin does come up in the air, and he leans back a bit when he's throwing some of these hooks. And he'll lean at angles and throw these hooks at an off angle, and they'll try and catch you as you come into the exchange. I think Volkanovski's going to be smart, and what we saw against Islam Makhachev was an ability from Volkanovski to step in and then start ripping to the body. And I think the body shots are going to be open for him here against Yair Rodriguez, especially if he can start really getting some respect early on with his kicks and with his hands and maybe shoot a couple takedowns that might not work, but maybe he gets a takedown in this fight early on. I think he can start getting respect for his level change, and that can start leading to like a jab to the body and a pull out afterwards, because that way, if Yair is going to go for like a flying knee, you can sort of move out the way of it. So I think he's going to keep it simple, fake to the head, start dipping dropping down to the body after he starts his exchanges as well. I think his kicks are going to be a big factor here as well. I think that's something that we didn't really see the best of against Islam Makhachev. In fact, he tried to sort of end his exchanges with kicks rather than just throwing them out there in the first place. Whereas we see in other Alexander Volkanovski fights, he's not afraid to just tap that inside leg at range. I think that's going to be something that's going to affect Yair Rodriguez, because a lot of the people that Yair has fought recently, when you look at his recent opponents, one thing that kickers don't like is other kickers. Simple as that. It interrupts them. It throws them off. You want to have your legs fresh when you're trying to throw kicks non-stop and spinning on your heel and stuff like that. If someone's chopping at your legs, the footwork's going to come down, and the dynamicness of those kicks is also going to come down as well. So if you look at the recent opponents of Yair Rodriguez, tell me what they have in common. Josh Emmett, Brian Ortega, Max Holloway, Jeremy Stephens, and the Korean Zombie. Frankie Edgar, BJ Penn. Those are his last wins. Finished Emmett by submission, finished Ortega by TKO, lost to Holloway, beat Stephens by decision, and then took Korean Zombie to the 5th round where he was losing, but landed an elbow at the end of it. Lost to Edgar by TKO, and then beat BJ Penn by TKO. All of those fighters have something in common. None of them throw kicks. BJ Penn is a boxer, pretty much, right, with great jiu-jitsu, or once great jiu-jitsu, should I say. Frankie Edgar is a boxer that moves around a lot, and he can wrestle. The Korean Zombie is a linear fighting boxer with knockout power and a great chin. You look at Jeremy Stephens, heavy hitter, maybe throws a calf kick now and again, but he's not too dynamic with it, and he normally throws big boxing combinations and overthrows massive power shots on the feet. Max Holloway has incorporated some kicks recently, but he's a boxer first, let's be real. Same with Brian Ortega. We don't see him throwing head kicks. And Josh Emmett, I have never seen him throw a kick above the body in my entire life. So those are the things in common with those opponents, where Yair has looked somewhat good. I know he lost to Holloway, but he looked good, and, you know, we're just going to ignore that Frankie Edgar fight as well for now. We go back to the Alex Caceres fight. Alex Caceres is the man who gave him his toughest win on his career. It was a split decision, and something Caceres does very well is kick on the back foot and stay elusive. Volkanovski does that, but Caceres is a bit taller, of course, so maybe that'll stop the effectiveness of the flying knee of Yair and the head kick of Yair. But I think Volkanovski can do what Caceres was doing, which was just throwing an occasional kick now and again to interrupt the flow state of the kicks of Yair Rodriguez. If Yair's trying to set his feet and go for head kicks and set things up, it's really going to bother him if Volkanovski's just staying at range, flicking his jab out there, and then after the jab, as he does at times, he'll just throw the inside leg kick as a routine. We saw that a lot with Holloway, where he'd flick out the jab and then tap the inside leg, and it would sort of like take Holloway off balance a little bit. We saw it with the Korean Zombie as well, constantly tapping at that inside leg, going to the calf on the outside as well, going to the body with the inside, with the lead leg as well. Really nice move there from Alexander Volkanovski. He'll do that at the end of an exchange. We'll see him go for a 1-2 and end it with a leg kick as well, with his head on the outside, which is very important when Yair's looking for those inverted elbows, upwards elbows, vertical elbows, and you see him going for those flying knees and front kicks as well. Volkanovski's very good at getting his head on the outside at the end of his exchange. So I don't see him getting caught coming in here. I think he will make that adjustment for the Yair Rodriguez fight, knowing how dangerous Yair is up the middle. But I do have to acknowledge, and this is the point of the video in the first place, Yair is the most dangerous guy. But I think the leg kicks of Volk, to add to that last point, are going to give Yair some problems and interrupt his flow with those kicks and start making him a little bit more flat-footed. And then there's another thing I want to talk about here before I get into why I think Yair is so dangerous. Again, to sum up, the takedowns of Holloway in the later rounds. We haven't seen Yair in the later rounds recently, and I'd love to have seen how he would have looked in the 3rd and 4th, because we know Volk's fresh in those rounds. But every single time we've seen Yair go into the later rounds, it starts not to go too well for him. The only exception to that is when he fought the Korean Zombie, where he was in great shape. He took it on short notice, but he was in great shape very clearly, and he stayed in the fight, although he did start to lose as the fight went on until the very last second where he landed that elbow. But we see in fights, Ortega, he finished him. Emmett, he didn't go to the later rounds. Holloway, once they hit the later rounds, even though he did good in round 5 with a bit of a second win that he got, in round 3 and 4, when momentum changed, it changed hard, and Holloway was able to get on top and do some ground and pound and do some dominant work there. We've also got Jeremy Stephens, where Yair Rodriguez gassed after an early exchange where he nearly got a finish and nearly got finished in the later rounds. Edgar took him down, drowned him. We saw what happened in that fight as well. I worry about him going to a decision here with Volkanovski. If it does go into those later rounds, which, by the way, is very likely at featherweight, I think it's a real big danger for Yair. But again, extremely dangerous for Volk. So I'm going to say that he drops Volkanovski early. I think that's going to be my sort of like, what do you call it when you meet in the middle or something? When you concede to something like that. I can't even remember what the word is. But that's going to be my, I'm going to, I don't even know what that word is anymore. I'm confused. But when you concede to something, you know what I mean? I'm going to meet it in the middle there. So I know Yair is so dangerous. I see people picking him. I don't think it's a bad pick. He's the guy to beat Volk. But I just don't think he's going to be able to finish him at featherweight in a title fight. Volk is so hard to finish. We've seen that. And we've also seen at featherweight, fights often go to decision. And all of the finishes in Yair's career, there's reasons for. Although he did arguably submit Ortega, it was that his shoulder popped out of place, and that's not going to happen 9 out of 10 times. But he does deserve respect for that. The Josh Emmett fight, Emmett was leaving one arm in and his head into the guard of Yair Rodriguez on the ground, accepting being elbowed on the face, and I think he arguably got rocked by one of those elbows as well. I think Volk's got this one in the bag. Plus, I don't think Volk's the type of guy to shoot double legs. I think what Volk could do really well here is push Yair up against the cage, because we've seen a lot of work with Volkanovski's grappling recently, where he can do outside trips, body lock drags and stuff like that, and he'll go for like a reversive position with a body lock and go for an inside trip on someone as well. We saw that with Makhachev. He almost got Makhachev down with it in the later rounds, but Makhachev used the whizzer to stay up on his knees and get back up to defense because of how good his takedown defense is. But I think we're going to see Volkanovski in or out, never in the very in. In the clinch or out of range. I don't think we're going to see him in the pocket too much here, because that's where he's in elbow range of Yair Rodriguez. So what I'm saying is when he's in, I think he's going to be all the way in, and I think he's going to be in the clinch with Yair, kneeing the thigh, punching the head a few times, and then sort of like hooking the leg, making him defend against the cage at the end of some of these rounds. And I think that will add up on Yair Rodriguez. And the more that Volk can pull that off, the better chance that he has as the fight goes on. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Yair Rodriguez is extremely dangerous. You can pick him to win this one. It's probably good odds. However, I can't pick against Volk right now. I think he's got a different level of fight IQ. He'll figure out Yair Rodriguez. Toodle pip. See you later. And goodbye.